You're listening to Booth Talk from the After Movie Diner. And on this episode, we're incredibly happy and thrilled to have the director of Excision, Trashfire, Suburban Gothic, and now Tone Deaf, which comes out this Friday, August 23rd, as you're listening to this, hopefully this week, 2019, which stars Amanda Crew and Robert Patrick. Yes, that's right. T2's Robert Patrick is back in this whacked out, gonzo, funny, weird, scary horror comedy from director, writer, and our guest today, Richard Bates Jr., also known as Ricky. We get into the politics of the film, the satire in the film, making the film, putting your passion and money and effort where your mouth is. We talk about directing Robert Patrick. We talk about everything to do with the film and indie movies right now. And if you've noticed on Booth Talk from the After Movie Diner, we've had a lot of indie directors, and we've got more coming up. 2019 is shaping up to be an awesome year for these sort of, unfortunately, like second-tier movies in terms of the way they're released, but first-tier in terms of content. It's just shaping up to be great. I've seen some really great screeners this year, and even the ones that aren't necessarily like the best films in the world have something interesting, have something different. So it feels to me, having spent the last few years kind of bemoaning the state of films, it feels so good to be in the midst of 2019 and seeing interesting stuff like Tone Deaf, which might not be for everybody, but I tell you what, it says a ton. It is enjoyable. It's weird. It's wonderful. It's different. You haven't seen something like this before. The performances are intense and interesting and funny, and it's just a great movie. So read the review over at aftermoviediner.com. Enjoy this interview with Richard Bates Jr. And don't forget, if you like Booth Talk from the After Movie Diner or anything that we do on aftermoviediner.com, then please do go over to Patreon, patreon.com/After Movie Diner, and consider supporting the show. Either that, please rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, wherever you find your podcasts. It is so very useful to have those rates and reviews on those podcast platforms. But it also really, really helps to go support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner, or just go to aftermoviediner.com and look at all the different ways that there are to support us, and enjoy the website. There's so much great content going up every single week, so please do check out the site and enjoy this interview with Richard Bates Jr.
Hello, can you hear me, Ricky?
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm good, sir. And how are you?
Good.
I really enjoyed Tone Deaf. It was fantastic. Such a lot of fun and some great sequences. Really enjoyed it. So well done on that.
Oh, so nice of you. Thanks, man.
Talking about Tone Deaf, what were your favorite scenes to shoot in the film in particular?
Gosh, I love working with the actors so much, especially on a movie like this. That sort of the approach was really inspired by like music, right? Like a song. You can create a dance song through sampling all these other genres of music, but still a dance song. So the idea was to create sort of a horror movie by sampling these other genres of movies and spacing them out equally. So, from coming of age films to slasher horror to absurdist comedy. So, which again was inspired as sort of after the election. It feels like, over the course of 24 hours, it feels like I'm living in, 10 different movies. I had so much fun with the actors, sort of, we went through the script, delineated the movies, and sort of adjusting their performance for each sort of kind of movie they're existing in over the course of the story that is, more traditional and, has more of a through line. So
Yeah.
I loved Robert Patrick's monologues. I had so much fun with him and breaking the wall and this notion that, there is no such thing as subtlety anymore, and this idea that even a villain in a movie right now couldn't help himself but to chastise the audience from
Right.
behind the screen,
Yeah.
because everyone's sort of fighting to be heard. So I really enjoyed those scenes. With Amanda, the acid sequence when she's tripping.
Mm-hmm.
We had so much fun with that. I thought she was really wonderful in that sequence. The movie has such a variety of different types of sequences, by virtue of sort of the conceit, that it's hard for me to really pick. But the performance stuff is always my favorite. I storyboard and I shot list all of the visual sequences, and I plan out meticulously, but the surprise and like the joy is always when I watch someone else do something, and it's really impressive,
Yeah, I mean, Robert Patrick's performance in particular, hopefully this will be one of those movies that, again, shines a light on an actor like Robert Patrick and kind of gets people to go back and delve into his filmography, because he's just been doing just fantastic work for like the last 30 years. But in this film in particular, you've been talking about, he gets to play so many different sides and shades and comedy and darkness and anger and surrealism and so on. Talk about kind of working with him, and was there ever a time where you needed to like push him to get to a place that you needed to go, or was he always there? Like, was he always up and ready to play?
Well, see, the sort of exciting thing, right? Like, no actor says yes to one of my movies without sort of looking at another one of my movies, right? And my movies are sort of out there, right? They definitely have sort of their own POV.
Yeah.
So when Robert said yes to this, he knew he was sort of saying yes to just going for it,
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier for me now, because I don't have to coax someone into, I don't have to sell them on exactly what we're doing. They're totally game by virtue of the fact they kind of want to make a movie with me.
Yeah.
So with Robert, I mean, man, it was so fun. He was, for both Amanda and Robert, actually, they do so many of these sort of more traditionally structured and, more like, I guess, tone, like sort of, in a more traditional film, you try to sustain a tone, right? That's the idea. With this, they had so much fun. I mean, they were my favorite line in the movie, Robert Patrick added, which was, "Don't hold back on the cherries" in the bar. When, because I would throw a few drinks at him, and then I said, give him a Shirley Temple and see what he'll do. Robert, no one would dare serve Robert Patrick a Shirley Temple. And he just rolled with it. You know what I mean? And that was the fun, always surprising them and them always being game to just, to sort of rock it. So Robert, I mean, I have more fun with the actors than anything else. Everyone in this movie, Robert included, was just a blast. It made everything so much more exciting, so much cooler. We experimented with different ideas. After we get the right take, I'll always come up with something we should try that maybe will be awful, or 1 out of 4 times is interesting, but you always got to try that. And he'd never say no, never, and always make it better. So
I've seen a few films recently, but also read a ton of articles that seem to be coming from kind of a Gen X perspective, or that generation that's between like the boomers and the millennials. And in this movie, Tone Deaf, obviously you have a lot of satire and social commentary that's sort of talking about how, I don't know where you're coming from, Ricky, but me personally, like, we kind of feel between two generations that are both sort of self-combusting almost. And
right.
You kind of have that commentary on both sides. Talk about balancing that, writing that, and kind of your own thoughts on what you hope people take from the film.
Well, right. So the overall message, to just put it bluntly, is that everyone's full of shit. We're all full of shit, myself included, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of a nice common ground. You know, that's where you meet in the middle. You know, once you become sort of that self-aware. You know, Harvey complains, you know, constantly about how, you know, millennials aren't self-aware, but he's not particularly self-aware himself. You know, it's so easy now with technology to criticize others without taking a long, hard sort of look at yourself in the mirror. But the idea was that, you know, Harvey has stopped growing, right? So
yeah.
he's open to nothing anymore. And Olive, on the other hand, is open to everything because she doesn't know who she is. And the fun of it was to put two characters like that, you know, toe to toe. So the movie actually ends with Olive sort of starting her life as a participant in it, you know, without, had Harvey not even in some weird, almost sick way, pushed her to become an active participant in her life, she almost would have never figured her own shit out, which is sort of, you know, my response to this election. You know, it was always complaining, but this sort of thing that happened, now everyone is up in arms and actually trying to do something about problems that have existed for a long time without them even knowing it in their own little bubbles. But it's when she sort of leaves the comfort of the safety of her, you know, downtown apartment that she sees it.
Yeah. No, that's a great
She
way
doesn't
to put
even
it.
know she's in a horror movie until the third act.
Right, exactly. And that's what's so much fun. Like, I love a good kind of cross genre picture that also has like something to say but says it with humor. It's why really Tone Deaf kind of spoke to me. It was a ton of fun watching it.
Well, it was always what John Waters always said to me. Is he always said, you know, if you want anyone to think about something or you want to make a point, the best way to do it is to make them laugh.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So, what were your? And you said obviously that your movies are unique and they have their own kind of point of view and voice, and that's definitely true. What are your influences then? What do you feel like goes into you putting together that point of view outside of obviously your personal experiences, but creatively, what are your influences, do you think?
Well, I think it's, the less I think about it, the more sort of pure it is, right? Obviously, when you make your first movie, you just make it the way you would want to make a movie. You don't necessarily think about anything but that. You make a movie on your own terms. And sort of the response to that was that, oh, this is, you know, from some people is this is interesting, this is different. So now I try to just completely follow my gut and my instincts and create a movie the way that I would want to see it, regardless of anything else, so that, you know, I do have this sort of grand delusions of creating this catalog of work that all sort of shares like a common through line. But really aesthetically, I spent my whole youth, right, watching movies. Now I try to read and go to shows and listen to music. And, you know, a problem with so many filmmakers with film schools now, I think, is that they don't know other art. They just know movies. And, you know, most movies, there's 5 or 6, you know, structures to work from and to sort of, you know, I guess you can deviate from slightly, but not really if you want to get them made. So
yeah.
My idea is I try not to watch movies when I'm making a movie anymore, because I think that's sort of becoming a problem with a lot of movies. They're all sort of uniform, which is crazy because the most content that's ever been made is being made now But when I take meetings, I've never dealt with more sort of restrictiveness or uniformity.
Yeah.
Everyone's sort of afraid. And, the exciting thing is when someone sort of says yes to one of my movies, even Tone Deaf, I lost financing once. I was ready to go. I was actually just before I got married, and the guy backed out. So this still happens to me all the time. I'm doing a new movie in a month from now that no one would finance. And my friend Matthew Gray Gubler is an actor. He's in most of my movies. He really liked it. So we just said, fuck it. And we're shooting it with our own money at our own houses. The difference is we sort of just don't let anyone stop us. I'm not going to not create the thing because I don't have the perfect situation. If I ever waited for like the perfect scenario to make a movie, I wouldn't have a movie.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we seem to be at a point right now where there are almost more options to distribute something than ever before, and yet we are seeing such a rise in the kind of traditional studio way of doing things, and you kind of think it's sort of insane that structure has come back when, in fact, there's more choice than ever, right?
Yeah, and that's sort of the ridiculousness of it all, because you just wouldn't think that'd be the case. But, if you want to watch something interesting, you still have to watch a movie, for the most part, from the 70s, right?
Right.
What I loved so much was Beach Bum this year. I saw that movie twice in the theater because, love it or hate it, that felt to me like it was like they stuck a funnel in someone's brain, and I was watching a human being, an idiosyncratic human being, and it did not confine itself to anyone's rules but the filmmakers. And that sort of excites me. Like if I ran a studio now, I would just give 20 people who've never made a movie in their life a couple $100,000 and say, make whatever you want. Because that's sort of where I grow from watching movies, and I'm so fascinated. I want to be in someone else's head.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would wish that there would be, I think when something like Blumhouse started off, we all kind of hoped that's what that would be, and then it immediately became the same as everything else. We all hoped that they would be, like you say, making $200,000, maybe $500,000 pictures, but putting out, 20 or 30 of them a year. However, I feel really hopeful in 2019 with a bunch of the independent stuff I'm seeing, but also some of the lower budget stuff that I'm seeing that a wave is turning, I hope. But so you say that you're about to shoot this next film, and you put your own money into it, which I think is fantastic. Can you give us any details on that, and when you hope to kind of be looking for distribution on that?
Well, yeah, that's the funny thing, right? You hear all these filmmakers, rich filmmakers, and I don't have much money, and they complain that no one will finance their passion project. But if you really want to do something, you can fucking do it.
Yeah, that's good.
You can't. It's sort of it's all I'll say is it's a pagan comedy, which that description. Now you know why it never got financed. But I almost want it to just come out of nowhere. It's about a coven of witches. I guess I could say I started writing something that was more in tune with horror, and the more I read about Wiccans, the more I actually fell in love with them, and I was like, these are my people. Like, this is the most wonderful religion I've ever heard of. It's so inclusive, and so it turned into this sort of nice movie without an ounce of horror in it.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see if anyone likes it. Your guess is as good as mine, but it's not going to stop me from making it.
No, well, I love that attitude, man. I hope you always keep that attitude. We've talked a lot on the show about, it being crazy when people shut down production because they're not getting all the money they want, and you just think to yourself, just put your own money into it or just do your own thing. So I love that. Thanks so much for talking with us today, and best of luck with the release of Tone Deaf and your next movie, dude.
Oh, hey, thanks so much for the interview. I really appreciate it.
And if you've liked this interview, you can find other interviews like it over at aftermoviediner.com. Like my recent conversation with the director of British folk horror Gwen, William McGregor. We also have interviews with Michael Madsen, with two of the kids in the hall, Scott Thompson and Kevin McDonald, as well as people like Peter Weller, Bruce Campbell, Ted Raimi, Michael Ironside, you name it. We have it, aftermoviediner.com/interviews. Go check them out, read them, listen to them, and enjoy them. Also, if you've enjoyed this show, don't forget to look up Booth Talk on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, wherever podcasts are found, and rate and review us. You can also support the show by going over to patreon.com/aftermoviediner. That's patreon.com/aftermoviediner. Thanks so much for listening. Look forward to our next interview very soon.